follow-up in case you want to share with colleagues or use it as reference. So with that, I'm so pleased to officially introduce Stacy Whitecotton, our author of Managerial Accounting, 5th edition. Stacy's an associate professor of accounting at the W.P. Carey School of Business at Arizona State University. And Stacy, we're so thrilled that you've offered your time today to showcase the distinguishing features of this really phenomenal managerial accounting text and digital solution. For those of you who are current users, this new edition is publishing this January, so you are getting a sneak peek at what's to come. And for those of you who are not current users, you're going to be able to hear a little bit more about this title and what makes it so special. And then we'll dive into some live demonstrations with our power user, phenomenal digital faculty consultant, Terry Zaccaro. Terry, if you want to wave, say hello to everyone. We're so excited to go live and share with you the incredible digital innovations that we've been working on tied to data analytics, career readiness, and an amazing new partnership with Microsoft Excel. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Stacy to kick things off.
Great. Thank you very much, Lauren. I appreciate it. I couldn't wait to get that picture of me off the screen. It's very large on my screen, but anyway, thanks everyone for joining. And so I just also wanted to kind of highlight our agenda, which Lauren just went over, mostly just to kind of keep on track. So I'm going to be talking about some upcoming sort of features in the textbook that she said, the 5th edition that is coming out. But really, I kind of like to step back first and just kind of talk about some of the issues that I experience teaching managerial accounting and that I hear from faculty, across the country when we do focus groups and go to conferences and things like that, just in terms of, challenges that we all face. I will then talk a little bit about my sort of my philosophy or my approach to teaching managerial accounting, which I've tried to translate into this particular book. And then I want to spend most of the time talking about a new feature that I have spent quite a bit of time writing this summer that's coming out, that is an integrated analytics case that also has a lot of social responsibility and sustainability elements in it. So that's kind of what I want to highlight. And then, as she said, Terry's going to walk us through a demonstration, a technology demonstration, which will give you some idea of how you might be able to implement some of these ideas in your classroom to make it easy on you and hopefully interesting for the students. And then hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So, just kind of to start out, so this is one of the things I often get people say, why another managerial accounting book? Because as you know, there's a lot of different managerial accounting textbooks out there. We all kind of teach the same basic content when we teach managerial accounting, whether it's, product costing or cost volume profit or variances or budgeting. So all of the typical topics that are so important to managerial accounting, we've been teaching this kind of the same way, or at least I have been teaching the basic content of managerial accounting the same way for a long time, for decades. And so while that hasn't changed, a lot has changed. Our world is completely different, and I can for sure say this right now than it was even a year ago or 2 years ago, in terms of how we're trying to deliver content, how businesses have had to deal with the things in the past couple of years. There's just a lot that's going on, all right, that is changing in the world, even though managerial accounting, the topics are still kind of the same and the content is kind of the same. So I like to kind of differentiate between what I think of as the core content in managerial accounting that we all teach, that we all test over, that we all need our students to learn. But then also, how do you kind of bring that into the modern world and kind of make it relevant to students in today's setting? So that to me is kind of one of the big challenges. We all know also that the accounting profession has changed in terms of what they're looking for from our students. And I'm sure you all hear how important it is to have good analytical skills and decision analytics and data analytics and analytics. All right, everybody wants students to be able to deal with data, use it intelligently, be able to make decisions. So that's really important. And at the same time, our students have definitely changed. I always like to say they get younger every year, even though they're still all 19 or 20 years old. But there's definitely changes over time, I think, in terms of our students, having really short attention spans, for one thing. They don't like to read. There's a lot more, at least where I'm at, a lot more variation kind of in the level of preparedness of the students. So there's more spread, I think, between the really, really good students and the students who struggle a little bit. And they're digital students. I mean, they grew up with an iPad pretty much probably in their hand at dinner, at least my kids did, that are about this age. And so things that sometimes we struggle with, you know, that technology has been part of their life forever. And then finally, I think the expectations that a lot of faculty have also increased the demands on faculty. You know, a lot of us are teaching more sections. We're needing to incorporate new content. Sometimes the sections have grown in terms of size, and so we have more students. And so it's really, there's a lot of demands, I think, on faculty as well. So just recognizing that those are some of sort of the challenges that we face. I just want to talk a little bit about my personal approach kind of to teaching and also what I've tried to build into the textbook. And I always get a little, I'm always a little cautious about presenting this because I don't think my approach is really probably much different than what all of us do when we go in the classroom. And so it's not really, you know, earth-shattering in any way, but essentially trying to use examples that resonate with students. I know I use a lot of personal examples and sort of personal analogies, whether it's, you know, going out to dinner or budgeting for a wedding or an event or something that students can relate to, because most of them don't have a lot of real world business experience. And so using personal examples, I think, is a good way to make the concepts relevant for them. I also think, because we do need to talk about products and customers and services, it's important to use things that students understand and that they're familiar with. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the focus company approach that I use in my textbook, which is a really a more integrated approach to teaching all of the topics where I use a specific company. And I always, when I'm picking out the focus companies, I try to think of something that the students already understand. All right, so a product that they understand, a company that they understand, ideally something that, you know, they might actually have on them, like a phone or a cup of Starbucks coffee or something like that. It really helps with the visualization. And then one of the things that I wanted to talk specifically about is how do we blend in some of these emerging topics, things like analytics and sustainability or corporate social responsibility, and how do we build that into kind of the course that we're already teaching that is already packed full of a lot of content in a way that doesn't make it seem like an afterthought, or in a way that doesn't make it seem like a separate category. All right. And then obviously trying to improve students' analytical skills, which I think the key thing is really just to make them think. I think managerial accounting is definitely a course where they can't memorize, where they really need to be able to think about things creatively and with different scenarios. And so that is also something that I've tried to build in when I can. So just briefly, the focus company approach that I use is, like I said, using a single product or single company in each chapter, sometimes across multiple chapters. A lot of times I do it across a couple of chapters that relate to one another. And something that students can relate to is the first criteria. The second criteria is trying to pick companies maybe that are already doing some of the things like incorporating sustainability into their mission, maybe facing something like, you know, I brought some Starbucks and the things that they had with having to switch to a lot of drive-through instead of in-person or in-store customers during the COVID pandemic, as an example, using products that students are familiar with, essentially. So examples like Apple and Starbucks and IKEA. I just recently added Cliff Bar as the kind of budgeting and then the variance chapters that I do together. And again, it was mostly because they've been doing sustainability stuff for a long time. Something students are probably familiar with. Even if they haven't worked in manufacturing, they can probably imagine what it would take to create a granola bar type product of some sort. So that's kind of the approach with the focus company. But I wanted to talk specifically about the Bombas example that I'm using in the next edition. So that's kind of my first chapter. In the 5th edition, I switched it from a pizza company to Bombas. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Bombas socks, but it's a really great example of a company that's kind of been built on this idea of social entrepreneurship or social responsibility. And I used to be able to show the episode of Shark Tank either in my class or in my online class, but I've had a hard time dealing with it. So I just kind of put together some slides to kind of tell the story, essentially of these two guys, David and Randy, who went on Shark Tank and they proposed selling socks, which is a kind of age-old product. It's kind of hard to imagine how that could be relevant and, you know, earth-shattering, since socks have been the same for a really long time. But they essentially did it as a one-for-one business, and so built it on this idea of getting customers to pay more for a simple product with the idea of doing something good at the same time. And they recognize that socks are the #1 most requested item at homeless shelters, and so they focus specifically on homeless individuals as kind of their social mission for that. So I do talk a little bit about it at the beginning of the first chapter, and also in my textbook, kind of to tell the stories. And this is a good way to bring in sort of the bridge between financial accounting, which the students will have been coming out of, into managerial accounting. So when they went on Shark Tank, they had a lot of questions about, you know, what is the investment level that they're expecting? There was essentially a valuation inherent in their pitch that you can talk about where that comes from. The sharks, typically, because they're essentially looking at it from an external investor perspective, are looking to see what kind of return they're going to get. And so essentially just pulled out some quotes from these sharks that are looking to invest in the company. So that just kind of lays the background. So for example, Mark Cuban is like, I'm out, you know, this is a low product or a low margin product. There's no way you're going to be able to essentially sell enough to make it worth my time. But they did strike a deal with Damon John, and this has turned out to be one of their most successful Shark Tank adventures. So this just kind of tells the story. And the reason I like to go over it is the integrated case that I wrote for this edition that I want to talk about kind of launches off of this story. So I basically tried to take the Bomba story and put it in a different context and a hypothetical business that students walk through. And so the basic idea is a one-for-one business model. So they're selling something. For every unit they sell, they're donating a product, just like Bombas did. The other thing that's kind of interesting, I think, about this scenario is that there's, even though it's just simple socks, there's some product variety in this particular example, where the socks that they sell, there's all kinds of different colors and, you know, compression socks and athletic socks. So there's a lot of variety if we talk about sort of complexity and variety in a product setting. But the ones that they donate are all very standardized, very simple, lower cost, but also more functional for the specific audience that they're looking at. So I thought those had some unique features that would work for a simple managerial accounting class. So that's how I came up with this idea of doing this integrated case. And it's called Bon Appetit, which sort of sounds like Bon Appetit, because this is a meal delivery business, but I tried to kind of do the same thing that they did, which is kind of use a Latin form of a word, but bene basically means good, petite means small, and so that's kind of where the name came from that you'll see. And so this is an integrated case that's going to be part of the textbook, but it's also available for people to use outside of the textbook. That, you know, anybody, I'm presenting it at a lot of different conferences and things that people can adopt it outside of that, but we do have some ways to facilitate the delivery of it, obviously, with Connect and some things that you're going to see later. So anyway, the basic content of this, and I won't go through a lot of it in great detail because we don't have too much time, but essentially it is a meal delivery business. So I don't know if any of you have ever, you know, ordered meals to be delivered to your house. It's kind of like HelloFresh meets Bombas is what I would say. So it's a meal delivery business that also has a social mission. And essentially it's serving two stakeholders. So busy, socially conscious professionals with high disposable income that can't, you know, come up with their own recipes and need to be able to eat healthy and provide for their families, etc. But it also has this homelessness element, similar to the Bomba stories, where it's a young entrepreneur, family-oriented person who realizes that homelessness is a major problem and wants to actually donate meals to homeless individuals, specifically focusing on families with children living in transitional housing. So that's basically the setting. And like I said, that's where the name came from. So in the case itself, there's a 2 to 3 page probably background for the case that kind of tells the story of how it all started, which is kind of just to kind of set the stage. And what's nice about this, when I use it in my class, it's good to have that foundation so that the students understand kind of how the business started, because we're going to talk about this throughout the entire course. And so it's good for them to have that dialogue, I think. And like I said, I'm a little bit of a storyteller, so I enjoyed writing that particular piece of it. But then in terms of the content, it's divided into 5 different segments, part 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'll just talk briefly about that, but essentially every part has some discussion questions, and those are organized by chapter or by content or topic area, I should say. There's some assessments, so if you wanted to assign this and then maybe do some, do a little quiz or multiple choice type question to make sure that they've gone through it as a way of grading it, that will be there. For some of them, there's problems. It would be more like a homework problem that would be built into Connect that is also auto-gradable. But I wanted to talk specifically about these data-driven analytics assignments that I've also created so that there's one for each major part of the course. And you can kind of do these in different sequences if you wanted. And I'm actually just now pilot testing this with my class. So some of the examples that I have to show you is actually out of students' assignments that they're turning in, or I graded a week ago, and even some that are due tonight that students turn in a little bit earlier. So the first part of it is just for them to understand the business problem. Taylor, by the way, is the name of this business owner, stay-at-home mom who decided to launch this business out of her kitchen. And so just basic stuff that we talk about at the beginning of the course, like, what's the business problem? Why does she need to understand financial accounting? Why would she need to know managerial accounting? How are they different? And things of that sort. Talking about cost classification, product cost and period cost and variable and fixed, and all of those things that we kind of do at the beginning of managerial accounting. But I also then now try to bring in some of these newer elements like sustainability, which I typically just refer to as the triple bottom line. Is, she wants to do more than earn a profit, right? She wants to have a social mission. And this is primarily a sustainability case that's focused on the social aspect of it, not the environmental side of the triple bottom line. But there's also some ways to talk about how she could be more environmentally responsible and things of that sort that you can build in as well. And then, like I said, just some basic idea of what is analytics, what are the different types of analytics, and how would we use that as we go about. The assignment, the analytics assignment for this first part is essentially trying to identify target markets using a lot of different types of data, specifically some demographic data like income data, and also by geography or by state. And then also I incorporated a lot of real world data that essentially captures the homelessness problem, because she has this dual mission of wanting to sell to high income families and couples while also donating to this homelessness problem. And so she needs to look at it a little bit more broadly than just looking at it from an economic perspective. So this is some of the data visualizations that students actually have done for this case, like doing a geographic map of median household income by state. And what the students are trying to get to is essentially to drill down into a place or a market that would satisfy both of these stakeholder groups. So this is pretty simple sort of visualization that students could do. This is something I actually had them do it as an analytics assignment. Some of them did it in Excel, some of them did it in Tableau, but you could also do it as a dashboard that you provide them rather than having the students do it. And Terry's going to talk a little bit about some of the dashboard activities versus applying Tableau activities a little bit later. They also looked, again, like I said, at homelessness statistics based on this data that I got from the Housing and Urban Division. I'm getting the name wrong, HUD, essentially. And so this is a type of data visualization that they did. Some of them drilled down and collected some information out in the state of Illinois, which is kind of where I targeted them by saying this is where this individual is starting out, and then also kind of drilling down into the specific areas that she might be looking at. And because she's going to partner with some other organizations to do the social aspect of it. So these are just some sample actual projects, like I said, that students have done where they've had to analyze the data and kind of focus in on the problem and eventually come up with a recommendation. So this is one of the recommendations that one of the students came up with, saying, you know, focus on Chicago to start, but now we need to be looking at other areas and visualizing the data problem, almost as if it's like an elevator pitch. What's the business problem to someone else? So that's the first part of it. Doesn't have a ton of accounting in it, but it sets the stage, I think, for thinking about how this small business owner would use managerial accounting. And we're going to do that then throughout the rest of the course. So the second part dives into product and service costing. I'm not going to be able to go through all of this in detail, but it's essentially two different, there's a lot of product variety. Customized meals versus the donated meals are very different. And so you can talk about cost drivers, you can have them do cost analysis, you can tie in job costing and process costing and activity-based costing and some different assignments. Again, they do some data visualizations. One of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm having them do a lot of discussion questions, and I'm using a tool called Yellow Dig, which, because this is an online class, and so it's a really good way to have them discussing the case. And so these are some Yellow Dig comments, which is a discussion forum that I use in my class. So even if they're not doing the problems and the analytics, there's just a lot of really great, rich detail in here for the students to use. Cost, volume, profit, and decision making lends itself really well. So this is an Excel assignment that they're currently working on to do break-even analysis. They're doing some make or buy analysis as well. And the last two parts, 4 and 5, I know I'm rushing through this, are still under construction. Literally, that's me typing at my computer. Still working on some of this stuff that's going to come out soon. So things like budgeting, variances, performance evaluation, all of that. I have kind of the template, but I'm just finalizing a lot of those assignments as I go through the semester. So that's kind of, I know I went through that in a whirlwind, but I did want to say that I have had some really good feedback from students on it. So here's some quotes that they had. Having a constant business example has really helped put the things that we're learning in the textbook and help them put into practice. They like the fact that it's a hybrid company. It's not purely manufacturing. There's some service elements and even a little bit of retail elements, which faculty always want to get to their students as well. They thought the food delivery idea was kind of trendy, something people in their age group could understand. They liked the donating aspect of it. Having a young entrepreneur that maybe they could see themselves being someday also kind of resonates with students. And actually several of them said, oh, I have a friend who's trying to do something just like this, or my partner is doing it, or I can imagine doing that. So the students, it kind of resonates with them, I think, and I'm super excited about it, and I've really enjoyed teaching with it so far in the limited amount that I've done. So that's kind of, to me, probably the most exciting innovation, or the thing I'm the most excited about with the upcoming edition. And like I said, I'm sharing this in a lot of different places around the country, trying to get people on board to using this case. So I'm going to stop blabbering and turn it over to Terry to talk a little bit about how we can use technology to do this and some other things in your courses.
And Stacey, just really quickly before we jump over to Terry, just a couple of questions.
Okay.
So one was just clarification. The continuing case that you're inserting into the new edition, is that a continuing case throughout the entire textbook, or does it just cover a certain number of chapters?
It actually, I'm using it throughout the whole textbook, actually. So like I said, I use Bombas for the first chapter kind of as the springboard. And then that first assignment that I talked in a little bit more detail is about chapter 1. But there are discussion questions at the end of every chapter. And then there's these major kind of projects that typically cut across chapters. So the costing part covers chapters 2 through 4. And then cost, volume, profit, and cost estimation kind of go together, and decision making are kind of lumped together, and then budgeting and performance evaluation, and even some of the financial chapters, like financial statement analysis, even blends in. Those are more in the parts 4 and 5. But yes, it goes all the way throughout, and has discussion questions. And then the case itself is at the back of the book, the storyline. is at the back, and then most of the assignments, the projects, deliverables, etc. Most of that will be delivered in Connect with the textbook, or I'm also providing it, like I said, as Excel documents and things like that outside. Does that answer the question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Any other questions that came up? I can't see the chat, so.
So we had one, this is kind of a question and a comment looking for feedback, but it sounds like the kind of focus companies that you incorporate into this solution are very much so entrepreneurial and seem to have that philanthropic element. And we know that students entering college today, you know, are often called the entrepreneurial generation. Do you find that utilizing those particular focus companies engage students a little bit more, just knowing what this next generation kind of looks like?
I do actually. I think there's two things. One is the focus companies, I think, often, even if they're not entrepreneurial, like think about Apple, for example, you know, I'm using that because, you know, students are walking around with iPhones and, you know, AirPods in their ears. So they know what the product is. So it's easier for them to visualize. That's obviously was an entrepreneurial company. And I do start out talking about how they started it out of their garage. I do think the entrepreneurship is there. It's an easy way for students who don't have experience yet to be thinking about things. I've had a couple of people at other conferences going, this would be great in like an entrepreneurship class or something that they could do across courses with entrepreneurship and accounting, for example. And so I think there's a lot of possibilities, and it does seem to resonate with the students from what I can tell so far. They're probably giving me more positive feedback maybe than because I'm still teaching them usually when they give me this feedback, but I'm excited about it and they seem to be as well.
That's fantastic. All right, well, those are the questions that we had come in. So let's go ahead and transition over to Terry.
Do I need to give up control, by the way, Lauren, or are you going to take that over?
I am going to pass it along to Terry
Awesome.
Really quickly.
Thank you. I'm going to go on mute just so you don't hear me, but I will be here to answer some questions as well.
Lauren, do I need to share my screen?
Yep, just go ahead and click share on the bottom of your WebEx panel.
Oh, okay. I was going up to my dashboard.
And while you're doing that, so we are now kind of transitioning from distinguishing content and author approach to our digital innovations that pair nicely with content. So Terry's opening up the Connect platform for accounting, and she's going to showcase some of our 4 career readiness innovations and also some digital aspects to Connect that can truly impact student learning, especially for students who are struggling. So Terry, everything looks good on my end, and you can go ahead and begin.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining today. As Lauren mentioned, I am a digital faculty consultant for McGraw-Hill, but I'm also an accounting instructor at Clark University in Dubuque, Iowa, which is a very small liberal arts private college. So as you can imagine, I teach many different courses within the accounting curriculum. And so I'm very familiar with quite a bit of the McGraw-Hill products and use a variety of textbooks. So I'd like to show 3 things today. First, I would like to talk about SmartBook. And maybe some of you are familiar with SmartBook. It is an adaptive reading experience for the student. I haven't assigned anything yet. You don't see it yet on my screen because I'd like to walk through as an instructor how you would create this assignment. So the beauty of SmartBook is, as the instructor, you control the content of what you want your students to know within any given chapter or even cross chapters within this assignment. And then on the student side, then they are going to be asked questions based on the areas, topics, learning objectives within that chapter that you've assigned. And you control the time you would like your students to spend within this activity. And also you can control when you assign it. I know Stacy mentioned earlier in her presentation about, of course, the universal problem is getting your students to read before they come to class. So in my experience, I assign SmartBook on the front end. So when I introduce the chapter, I usually cover about a chapter a week in most of my courses. When I introduce the chapter is when I assign SmartBook. So having assigned SmartBook in the front end is, I'm hoping, of course, my students then have read the chapter, they're familiar with the concepts and the topics then I am going to discuss in class. But of course, there's no right or wrong. I know instructors who use it on the back end, or as we'll see, you can create a review assignment. Maybe you assign this maybe before a quiz or exam. So there's lots of different options available. So let me walk through what this looks like on the instructor side when you create the assignment. So I would go to my add assignment, and as you can see, there is a separate link for the SmartBook 2.0. And I'll go into that, and you have an option here to create it as a new assignment. And once again, as it states, you can assign one chapter or multiple chapters. And as I mentioned, you could also do a review assignment. I'm just going to go ahead and select a new assignment. And then we'll go down here and we can choose once again one chapter or multiple chapters. I'm just going to go ahead and choose chapter 2. And I will hit continue. And now you can see within chapter 2, it has broken it out into all the different areas of that chapter. And we can even get more granular. And right now, let me just pause here for a minute. As you can see right now, all of the items are checked. And you can see then the concepts that potentially would be covered if this was assigned for the students. On the right-hand side, there is this toggle bar. So if I currently assign this as is, it's going to take my students on average 115 to 173 minutes to complete. And as you can see, they're going to have to complete 96 concepts. I don't know about you, but my students would be a little frustrated if they were spending this much time. So I can adjust the time with this toggle bar. So that's one way to adjust. Or over here, maybe there are certain aspects of this chapter that I'm just not going to put a lot of weight on. Now, this chapter doesn't have an appendix. Maybe there's an appendix I'm not going to cover. But also within this, I can drill down even further into each of these areas, and you can see you can also preview a sample question. So if I'm just going to choose some, so you can see I can maybe uncheck some things that maybe I don't feel are important. And I don't know if you notice on the right hand side here, the time frame, when I'm unchecking items, it's reducing, of course, the time and the concepts. McGraw-Hill has done quite a lot of studies with this, and kind of the sweet spot for SmartBook, they said, is around 30 minutes ideally for students. So once again, once you get your assignment set up, you get the time, I would hit continue, and then we're able to, of course, name the assignment. I need to enter a due date, and then once again, set your points. Just as I mentioned, I use SmartBook on the front end, as I already mentioned. I'll just create this for 5 points. I assign SmartBook for every chapter that in my textbooks. So overall, my overall grade, SmartBook represents maybe about 7% of my final grade. So just enough to dangle the carrot to get students hopefully to do the SmartBook. So once again, this is an adaptive reading experience. So let me just go in fairly quickly and show you what this looks like from the student side. Also, the beauty of SmartBook is this is kind of seamless. Students can pretty much do this anywhere. They can do this on their phone. They can do it on their laptop, of course, desktop. And I don't know if some of you are familiar, McGraw-Hill has a Read Anywhere app that students can download for free, and they have access to all their McGraw-Hill textbooks, and then access, of course, to SmartBook assignments. So as you can see, as a student, it's going to give me some information. It's going to tell me about the amount of time estimated, concepts. Now, of course, students can approach this probably in two different ways. Maybe they've already read the textbook, and so they're coming in and they're ready to go ahead and start answering the questions. Or students maybe are going to read, they can read and do the questions as they go. So of course, it's probably going to take them longer if they haven't read the book, and they're going to kind of read and do the questions together. It also gives the students some assignment tips. And as you can see here, it's going to show how the students will know their progress. It's okay to get questions wrong as long as they complete the assignment and answer the concepts that you've assigned, they will still earn 100%. But as I mentioned, this is an adaptive reading experience. So the system knows if you have a student who is getting answers wrong consistently or is just guessing, the system is actually going to somewhat kick them out of the question and kind of tell them that they need to go back and read. It's also going to ask them their confidence. Like this says, it does not affect their grade. So I tell my students to be honest on their confidence. If we have time today, there is a wonderful report then that you can run as an instructor that gives you a lot of information about, of course, the students who completed this, how long it took the students. It's going to give you a metacognitive report based on that confidence. So how many students, what percent of students were very confident and got the answer correct? Of course, what you want to be concerned about is the students who thought they were very confident they had the answer correct, but of course, got the answer incorrect. So got it. So you can see you're going to get a variety of questions. Usually the questions are either true, false, fill in the blank, could be multiple choice. So very basic. So as you can see here, if I want to go in, I can go and read about the concept. Now, based on what you chose for the concepts to cover, the system, once again, as this adaptive reading, the system has then highlighted the areas of the textbook that cover. So it's not going to tell the students exactly where the answer is to the question. It's going to take them to the section of that chapter where the answer is. So if I go back to the questions, let me just answer this. I'll say that was false. Once again, the students have to pick their confidence level. And once again, this does not affect their grade. So I'll say I have a pretty good confidence, and I got the answer right. And then I can keep going on to the next question. After the student answers the question, they can go back and read, and now you can see it changed it to blue. So even though I got the answer right, or if I would have gotten the answer wrong, if I hit that button, it's going to take me to then the area in the book after I submitted the answer, where the part of the textbook where the answer to that given question was. Also, I'm going to mention, I'm not going to go through it all as a student. One nice feature of SmartBook 2.0, once the student has completed the assignment, they're going to be given an option called recharge. And that recharge, they can go back into this assignment at any time. It does not affect the grade they've already received on the assignment. So as the name says, they can use this as a review. And since SmartBook is an adaptive reading experience, it remembers for that given student the concepts they struggled with most in that chapter. So if students, and once again, this is something students are going to have to initiate on their own to go back in and use that recharge feature. And then the system is going to ask them questions, like I said, on the concepts that they had the most difficulty with. And a student can spend as little or as much time answering those questions. So I think that's very helpful for students, especially maybe before, of course, a quiz or an exam. So in my example here, I use Chapter 2 Smart Book. So maybe there's a midterm and the student, hasn't looked at Chapter 2 in quite a few weeks. So they can go back and use that recharge feature as maybe a good review for that quiz or exam. Is there anything else, Lauren or Stacy, you'd like to mention about SmartBook before I move into the data analytics, or any questions from the group?
Right, Terry. No, I think you did a wonderful job describing SmartBook and what that experience is like for students.
Thank you. So the data analytics, as Stacy was mentioning, so I chose two, both kind of very different in the Tableau Dashboard activity. We will see already has an active dashboard that's provided to the students. And then students are going to have to be, they're going to answer questions based on that given scenario. And also the other nice thing is this is auto-graded. Applying Tableau, as we'll see, students actually have to create the actual dashboard. And we'll talk about both of those. So let me first go into the Tableau Dashboard activity. And I'll show you the what the instructor is seeing, which is pretty much same as the students. So I chose this one. I really like this one. I use this in my class. So once again, this is an active Tableau dashboard. So as what we're seeing here, this is an accounts receivable chapter. So this dashboard is giving me this company, IBS, and they sell point of sale systems all over pretty much the world. So they have companies that they, their customers are scattered throughout the whole world. So as you can see, if I hover over any country, so Russian Federation, you can see it's going to tell me of all the companies that I do business with in this country. It gives me the grand total of their accounts receivable, and it also has shown the aging of those, and also the receivables turnover ratio. And you can see up here on the bar, this data also kind of presents to the students. So we discuss what accounts receivable turnover is, and you can see very low are the countries that, of course, are more red, and green has the higher. So for example, Russian Federation, Brazil, of course, looks a little bit more orange, a lower receivable. So you can see this is an active dashboard. And let me scroll down. Once again, as I mentioned, it lists all the companies then throughout all these countries. And let me scroll down to the questions. Once again, it gives some students some guidance that if they want to see the companies for a particular country, as we'll see in a minute, is one of the questions. They can either click on that country or they can use, you can see we have a search feature, we can zoom in, we can zoom out. So there are 4 questions, and as I mentioned, so it's using that data. So for the students to go up and use that data to answer the questions. And also, once again, these are all auto-graded. So you can see in this case, the first question is identifying 3 countries with the most favorable. And as you can see, students then are given a drop-down list with countries that they have to choose from. So they're not given all the countries. They're giving a list, but at least it's going to allow students to have to go up to that dashboard and find those countries and enter their receivables. Another question might be which country had the lowest. So once again, there's a drop down here with countries. So students can go find those given countries and see which one had the lowest. Requirement 3 is asking about a specific country, Peru, and which company appears to cause that country's low turnover. So as I mentioned, hopefully my geography is good here. There's Peru. If I click on Peru and isolate it, you can see then it shows me the companies then that I deal with in Peru. And then based on that, it shows this aging analysis of the receivables for each company. And therefore I can answer that question. And then finally, the fourth question is looking at, in this case, I'm going to actually have to calculate the allowance for uncollectible accounts for South Korea. And in the question, it does give you the company's estimates for percentages for their outstanding accounts receivable. So of course, I would have to go back up here, find South Korea. And if you remember, for each country, it gave you the breakdown. So students will just have to perform that computation. So that is a Tableau dashboard activity. So once again, the active dashboards have been provided. Students are going to be prompted to answer questions based on that scenario. And then of course, the other beauty is that this is all auto-graded. Anything else Stacy or Lauren, you would like to mention, or questions from the group on the dashboard activities?
Hi, Terry. I think you did a really great job showcasing our Tableau dashboard activities. And I did note this in the chat, but our data analytics content across the curriculum for accounting at McGraw-Hill is quite robust. We've been building this type of content for over 4 years. So what you will find is that we offer data analytics content in kind of a scaffolded building block approach. So these Tableau dashboard activities are a wonderful place to start because there's no experience required to enter into one of these Tableau dashboard activities. We're not sending students outside of Connect. We're literally giving them an entry point to simply have access to a Tableau dashboard that's already populated with its big data and the visualizations are already created. And we're giving them this entry point to then visualize this data, analyze it to make business decisions, and then ultimately answer auto-graded questions. So again, a great entry point for any student or any instructor. And Terry is going to kind of move forward and show you what the next step up is once your students are comfortable with that entry point. So I will leave it to you, Terry, to show what that next step looks like.
Thanks, Lauren. So let me go in now to the applying Tableau. Once again, I chose this. This is looking at a receivables management. So as Lauren was mentioning, now this one is actually going to require the students to create the dashboard. But as you can see, there is a walkthrough video which gives the students all the information that they need. And you can see it's about 11 minutes. They can walk through this video. Here is the Excel spreadsheet, in this case, that students then would download. And as it said, they can save it, of course, anywhere on their computer. And students then have access to Tableau. So by creating an account with Tableau, then they can bring in this Excel spreadsheet. And as I mentioned, there's also short training videos that are available. It gives you a lot of information for the students to walk through. So even though this probably is going to take, of course, a little bit more time on the students' behalf than the Tableau dashboard activity, it's really not a great deal more of time, but getting students used to using data analytics and creating a dashboard. So I can kind of maybe, so as you can see,
the data set is in the form of an Excel file available to download from Connect.
So like I said, it really walks the student through every step along the way. So it's a really nice introduction for students who maybe are new to using data analytics or Tableau. And then, of course, it's going to ask the students, similar as we saw with the Tableau Dashboard activity, it's going to ask students questions then based on that scenario. And once again, in this case, we have 4 requirements, I guess, of questions. And students are going to have to then answer them then based on the dashboard they've created. And once again, this is also auto-graded. Of course, the explanation provides all the detail, and as you can see, there's a link to what the chart should have looked like on Tableau for the students. So something students then would get feedback on also if you allow that in your policy settings. I know we're kind of getting short on time. Anything else you'd like me to show with this, Lauren or Stacy?
I would go ahead and maybe reopen one of the dashboard images at the bottom. So one thing that I will note, Terry is showcasing this applying Tableau activity from the instructor side. And on the instructor side, what we do is we link to the actual image of what that Tableau dashboard looks like once students complete all of those steps. That is something that we give instructors access to, so you know exactly what the final Tableau dashboard is going to look like. And one thing I will also mention, you might have noticed that all of the instructions for students to build out their Tableau dashboard, they're very granular, detailed instructions. So they might look lengthy, but there's a rhyme and a reason to that. We want to make sure that we're not tripping students up in any way when they're building out their dashboard. So we have really implemented steps that are, you know, one step at a time, not combining multiple steps, so that ultimately we know students are going to be successful building that dashboard. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, this activity is about giving some of that hands-on experience with the Tableau software, but we don't want building the dashboard to do anything but build up student confidence and then be able to work through the accounting scenario that's been assigned to them. And I can give you some statistics. So typically it takes students about 7 to 8 minutes to build these dashboards based on the very detailed and split up instructions. So you'd be surprised that they will build them quicker than I can because they're also very digitally savvy. But we get great feedback from students on these activities. They love getting access to software that they'll actually utilize in their careers. And ultimately, it's very empowering for them to then be able to learn some of their accounting curriculum through the lens of data analytics and utilizing this software. All right. Well, Terry, thank you so much for showcasing our data analytics content in the newest edition of Whitecotton. We're very excited about this. Career readiness in general is a huge theme in accounting, and of course, data analytics with all of the changes that we're hearing about in regards to the CPA exam, and just ultimately knowing that students more and more are analyzing their ROI on investing in a bachelor's degree and what that's going to turn into for them post-graduation. So these data analytics content types really speak to showcasing for students that we're very focused on preparing them for their careers. And like I mentioned, we get a lot of really positive feedback from students when we can connect what they're learning to ultimately what they're going to be doing post-graduation. So I did see a question come up in the chat saying, what's the next Tableau step? So really, these are a 2-step scaffold. So you want to start with Tableau dashboard activities. That's that entry point where we're, dipping our toe in the pool of data analytics and Tableau, where students are going to stay within the Connect environment. We're going to hand them pre-populated live Tableau dashboards, and we're just going to prepare them and introduce them to visualizing data, what that looks like, manipulating that data to make analyzing it easier, and then ultimately delivering them questions based on the accounting scenario that that data is tied to. The next step up is assigning and applying Tableau case. And that's where we're then going to send students out and give them their instructions and their data set to build their dashboard, and then manipulate, analyze that data, and ultimately come back into Connect to answer some auto-graded questions. So I hope that answered the question in the chat. And I'm actually going to steal presenting privileges over to myself. Let's see if I can do this really quickly, because next up, we wanted to share with you guys some really exciting information around our partnership with Microsoft Excel. So give me just 1 second. I'm going to make myself the presenter and I'm going to share my screen. All right. Here we go. And hopefully someone can give me a thumbs up that you can see my screen. Awesome. Thank you, Terry. So we are very excited about this. We are partnering with Microsoft Excel to take our Excel content that is available in our accounting courses to the next level. So those of you who are familiar with Connect and our Excel offerings in the past, you know that we've offered Excel simulations where we've created a simulated environment within Connect for students that gives a look and a feel of Excel, but doesn't offer all of the compounding resources of the live software. And we also offer content that's similar to applying Tableau, but utilizing Excel software, where we send students out of Connect with data sets. But ultimately, we've really been focusing on taking things to the next level and taking into account all of the feedback that we've received from instructors, which includes, you know, giving all students equitable access to Excel, not having the expectation that they're going to have access to that Microsoft Office software outside of Connect, the need for auto grading, the need for students to get hands-on experience with Microsoft Excel and utilize it to be able to analyze data. So we're very excited because we've been working with Microsoft over the past 2 years to create what we call integrated Excel assignments. These are new as of August, and our integrated Excel assignments are literally a live, seamless experience where we are fusing together live web-based Microsoft Excel within our Connect platform as an assignment. So no more uploads and downloads of data files, no more sending students outside of Connect and expecting them to have access to Microsoft software. We have fused together everything into one experience. So I'm really quickly going to walk you guys through what this looks like as a student. So these new integrated Excel assignments look and feel just like any assignment in Connect. So if I'm a student, I'm going to open up my assignment. I'm going to see my basic details of my assignment, and then Microsoft Excel and the assignment itself are going to open up in a new tab, and immediately students are going to be presented with information on what the grading policy is for their assignment. Now, this is really important to you as instructors, because one phenomenal feature of these new integrated Excel assignments is that you as the educator get to decide what your grading policy is going to be. So you can choose formulas, or you can choose both formulas and values. So depending on what your student population's experience is with building formulas versus not, you get to decide what that grading policy is. And we're going to remind students of that grading policy multiple times within their assignment to make sure that they're successful. So once students click OK, they're going to open up their assignment, and you can see here, students are literally going to be in live Excel, and their assignment is embedded within their spreadsheet. They get all of the resources because it is live Excel, including all of the help capabilities of Excel. And ultimately, we have a guide on the right-hand side that gives them information on what this question or this exercise is covering, and some learning aids. So the first thing I'm going to mention is that students have a scratch pad area within their Excel assignment. If I open that up, it actually takes them all the way down to the bottom of their assignment. And this is a no stakes learning environment, meaning that if I'm the student, I can practice my formulas here. Nothing is graded. The assignment will save any work that I drop into this area, but it's just a safe space for me to do anything on the practice side before I go back into my Excel spreadsheet and I enter in my answers in the graded yellow cells. So these yellow cells are what is being graded in my work. And once I start inputting any information into these cells, I can also use the Check My Work learning aid. So if I click this open, it's really just going to tell me if I'm on the right track. Are my answers correct? Are they incorrect? And this is really helpful, especially dependent on what your grading policy is. Because as a student, I'll learn very quickly if I didn't complete my answer because you're asking for the formula and I'm only entering in the value. So as a student, I'm going to continue to work through my assignment. And let's say I want to go back to read my ebook. I can do so because Connect is still open in another tab. But before I do that, I'm going to get a message that reminds me to save my work because we want students to be successful. And that's very, very important that they save their work if they're going to exit out of their assignment. Now, once I've completed all of my work, I can go ahead and save it. And again, I'm going to get a pop-up about the grading policy my instructor has set. So again, we're just really impressing upon students how important it is to know the grading policy and answer correctly. And then from there, I can go ahead and submit my assignment. Now, once I'm done, instructors, so you as educators, get to decide if I can choose to view my results. If you decide that you want me to have access to that, as a student, I click view my results. I can see the basics of the points that I've earned, and then I can go in and review my assignment versus the correct answers. So you'll see here, I'm back in my assignment and these are my personal answers, but I can toggle back and forth. So now I'm at the correct answers spreadsheet and you'll notice that here I'm given the solutions to these graded cells. My instructor requires formulas, so it's giving me the formula answer. It's also giving me a common alternative formula answer. And I always like to point this out because we recognize that answer tolerance is so incredibly important when we're asking students to work in Excel. We've worked very hard with Microsoft to ensure that if there are different iterations of answers that should be acceptable, that our system is tolerant of receiving those answers. And in many instances will actually dictate to students when they're reviewing if there is a common alternative formula answer. So that is a very quick demonstration of our newest innovation with Microsoft Excel that we're so excited about. And the newest edition of Whitecotton is going to receive integrated Excel assignments. So this is a really phenomenal innovation that is coming to this particular Connect course in the spring. All right, and I know that we are at time. So I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you to our amazing presenters, Stacy and Terry. You've done such a tremendous job and we're so appreciative of all that you do as educators, as partners with McGraw-Hill. So thank you so much. And to all of our attendees, we will follow up with the recording of this event and some follow-up information, including the slides that you've seen. If you need anything from our team, if there's anything we can do to help support you in your teaching efforts in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We offer many services for product training, presentations, anything you need, we're here to help with. So please reach out and reach out often. And thank you for all that you do as educators. And with that, everyone have a wonderful afternoon. Take care.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, everybody, for joining.